Currently, more than 30 governors across the country are against the federal government allowing Syrian refugees to settle inside of their states. Doesn't matter that they have no legal or constitutional authority to stop it from happening, but they're against it. Now, Rick Snyder of Michigan, a Republican governor, was one of the first to come out against it. So he says that the vetting process is suspect. He doesn't trust it. So when given the opportunity to explain how he would change it, let's see what he comes up with.
What concerns you, if anything, about the security check that is currently in place that takes almost 2 years in many cases, that involves the National Counterterrorism Center and other agencies?
Well, I wouldn't single out any specific problem I have with it, but when you have these events, doesn't it make sense you should pause and simply say, let's continue looking at these events. And I really want the federal government to come back and say, we have now made a review of these at least 3 situations and believe their current system is acceptable or not, or that they're making some modifications.
So nothing. So you have, in the more extended version, he says that we've had these recent terrorist attacks. So far, none of them have been shown to have been committed by Syrian refugees. So you have all these terror attacks that don't have anything to do with Syrian refugees, and you have a policy that you can't come up with a criticism for, so we should suspend the policy that you don't actually have a problem with because of an issue that has nothing to do with it, despite the fact that pausing, as you say, could lead to the deaths of hundreds or thousands of Syrian refugees. Makes all the sense in the world, I think.
All the sense in the world. Look, I don't know if these 30 governors actually looked into what the vetting process is or how comprehensive it is, but there was a really
You're being
great
too
point.
nice.
I know, I am being too nice.
I bet they were up all night.
It's weird. It's almost as if I expect politicians to know a thing or two about how our government works and how these things happen prior to them actually making these very strong public statements about entire groups of people.
Yeah.
But with that said, there was a really great point made about how Syrian refugees are going to be vetted much more closely than people who come to the United States for tourism. People who travel to the United States just to visit, whether it's family, to sightsee, whatever it is. As long as you have a passport, it shouldn't be an issue for you to come into the United States with no vetting process whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that to you to fearmonger or to make you scared. I'm saying that to you to show you just how ridiculous and misplaced the anger and the fear is when it comes to the Syrian refugees.
Yeah.
Think about our history with refugees. Think about Cuban refugees, for instance, right? We allow them into the country, we give them amnesty, and we do that because they're escaping the communist rule in Cuba. And then you have people like Ted Cruz mouthing off about Syrian refugees as if they're any different, as if, they're terrorists coming to the country trying to cause terrorist, violence. That's not why they're coming to the country. They're coming here to escape the same thing that we're trying to fight against in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and it's interesting what pussies these southern governors are, all those governors who did that, because
Majority of governors.
let's remember that after World War II, we took Nazi refugees. We didn't take refugees from Nazism. We took actual frickin' Nazis, okay? Yeah. And they worked on our space program called Operation Paperclip. Okay, so they built our space program. Actual Nazis, all right? These weren't people fleeing Nazism, actual Nazis. So these guys are actually afraid of children and women and people fleeing the same enemy that we're fighting.
Yeah.
So they're fleeing them. We're like, But we'll take Nazis. We'll have no problem. We were tough enough to take Nazis, but we're not tough enough to take Syrian
children, no.
So, again...
Andre Totaro says it's the kids. Those are exactly the people that we should be scared of. Because they're going to grow up and not be able to get jobs and become terrorists. And because we only have 15 years to prepare to get some jobs ready for them, we can't take that chance.
You know what, Johnny? What you should do this holiday season is don't say Happy Holidays. Say Merry Christmas when you say no to a refugee.
Exactly.
That's how you can show you're a Christian.
Yes. Yeah, do like Dana Perino says.
Get out.
Push their boat off the shore with a good-hearted nature, and then it doesn't betray our core values as Americans.
How incredible is it that France accepted 30,000 refugees after becoming victims of one of the worst terrorist attacks? Okay. Yeah. How is it that they have the open-minded mentality to allow people to come in? They don't have an issue with it, but here in the United States, we just can't make it happen.
Well, Chris Hayes from MSNBC tweeted out, because he's in France, and he said it was very interesting to see the different conversations people are having here in France as opposed to back in the United States.
Right.
And back in the United States, it's all about the refugees. Here in France, they're letting in 30,000 more because they realize that the attackers back in January and these most recent came from inside France or from the Eastern European Union.
Yes.
So it's not like, and the way Chris Hayes put it was, it's not a faucet you can just turn off.
Right.
Yeah. Now, so you both talked about the fact that the terrorists tended to come from Europe. You talked about the tourism issue, so I want to punch Snyder a little bit more. He was asked about the issue, the differentiation between refugees and tourists.
There are people who come to the United States on tourist visas. There are people who don't even need visas to enter the United States from Western Europe, which is the point of origin for some of the Paris attackers, for example. Would you also pause the other ways that people can enter the United States?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily do that. But again, this is a particular case of this refugee process that there is a high degree of concern. And I heard that from our citizens.
I don't mean to belabor this point, but I'm still wondering why only focus on refugees when there are so many other ways, much quicker ways, that people can enter the United States.
Well, again, I hope they're making a regular review of all those questions. The one that stood out most quickly, though, was the refugee question about the process.
Everybody likes the idea of politicians directly addressing the concerns of their constituents. I am so done with it.
Yes.
I've heard it from my constituents after months of people like me and Fox News telling them that every person coming from Syria is a terrorist. Now some of them think they're terrorists.
Yeah.
And so I must pursue this policy.
Right.
It's either that or it's a presidential candidate saying, well, I go from city to city and a woman told me. They invent these fucking fictional people. No, just say it's what you believe. And it's either good and has evidence in support of it or it doesn't. I don't want to hear about any bullshit made up people that you either created or influenced.
Right. So let's say, just to give him the benefit of the doubt, he has been approached by constituents who are very concerned about these refugees. And as a result, he's taking the proper precautions to prevent terrorism and also to represent his constituents. You, as a politician, are supposed to be a leader, right? And what I mean by that is not that you go out and you do things on your own without listening to your constituents. Yeah, you listen to the concerns of your constituents, and then you look into the issue and figure out what the truth is.
Yeah.
People are fueled by fear after attacks like this, right? Irrational fear. And as a result, you as a leader need to look into things like the vetting process for the refugees and explain to your constituents what the reality is. That's what a leader does. But he's not a leader, okay? He's a clown.
He's a clown. And I'm sure if the people that he was meeting, his citizens, were saying, hey, we should let the refugees in, he would be like, well, my citizens said let them in. So
I'm sure.
I'm all for whatever my people say. That's what I'm for.
Yeah, if you live in Michigan, why don't we send some emails to him? Because apparently he reads one text message and he's just swayed. He's just in the wind. He's made a paper. You mentioned France still accepting the 30,000 refugees. Germany obviously accepting more than perhaps any other country, despite the fact that they're far smaller than America. We're debating accepting 10,000. It's a country of 330 fucking million people, but we're debating 10,000, which you could literally put in the neighborhood that we're filming this video in, and you wouldn't even necessarily know if you cross the street. We're debating that. France is letting in 30,000. We've had the Statue of Liberty for a very long time, and over the past couple of weeks, we've talked about the quotation on it, the poem, obviously, about, give us your tired huddle masses, all that.
Yearning to breathe free?
Yeah, I don't know how much it would cost to dig that fucker up. Let's ship it back to France, because we don't deserve it anymore. France deserves it. They sent it to us, but now they're the ones that are letting in international refugees, the people who perhaps more than any other people in the world desperately need to be somewhere else. You've seen the videos, because the media has loved showing you the videos over the past year, of the beheadings and the stonings and throwing people off of buildings, killing people recklessly, massacres, all sorts of violence. And those are the people that we're saying, no admittance. Well, then we don't deserve it. We either put a big tarp over it for the next couple decades, we'll revisit the issue in 30 or 40 years, or we crack it open out of the ground and we ship it back to Paris and let them use it, because they're actually letting in these people.
Not only that, but, politicians like Barack Obama like to say, we need to send the message that we're not going to let a terrorist change who we are.
Well, that's certainly already happened.
We changed immediately after 9/11. And let's remember that not only are they spying on us, reading our emails, tapping our phone against the Fourth Amendment, but they repealed... Barack Obama signed the indefinite detention order, which means they repealed the writ of habeas corpus. The writ of habeas corpus means you can't imprison someone without charging them in a timely manner. And why did they put that in there? Because the people who thought of this country knew that tyranny started when a tyrant just didn't like what you were saying against them. They'd put you in prison. And that, because that happened all the time. right? And so now we have that again. They've repealed the writ of habeas corpus, which is in the Magna Carta.
Yeah.
So, because of a terrorist attack in America, we repealed the fucking Magna Carta, and we are now operating on a liberty view from somewhere around the 1100s.